Judge me if you want, but do not pretend you have never wanted a quiet man to prove there was some fire inside him. I did not invite my ex to my husband's birthday because I wanted blood. I wanted one honest reaction from a man who could turn every wound into a calm discussion and every argument into another chore he would finish later. When Cole lifted Evan's birthday cake and smashed it into his face, I believed the test had finally reached the point where Evan would have to show us who he was. I laughed and said, "That doormat won't do a thing." Evan wiped frosting from one eye, folded the dirty napkin once, and asked Cole to leave. Cole shoved him and raised his fist. My husband moved only once, and 14 people inside the cafe stopped breathing at the same time. My name is Morgan Hale. I was 34 then, and I worked as a senior insurance claims adjuster. My job was to separate accidents from choices. A burst pipe was an accident. Leaving a window open during a storm was a choice. A person could give me 10 emotional reasons, but the photographs usually told me what mattered. I liked that. Feelings changed shape when people were cornered. Evidence did not. My mother taught me to look for visible evidence in love too. My father left when I was 13, but the leaving began long before the suitcase. He stopped touching her shoulder when he passed behind her. He stopped watching her enter a room. My mother noticed every missing glance and said nothing until he moved in with a woman from his office. After that, she had one warning for me. A woman should never become so comfortable that her husband stopped seeing her. She repeated it when I gained weight in college, when Cole missed my birthday, and even on the morning I married Evan. I told myself I had rejected her fear. Mostly I learnt to hide it inside better language. Evan and I had been together for 9 years and married for 6. He was 36 and built custom cabinets for old houses. His hands were broad, scarred at the knuckles, and gentle with anything that could crack. He could spend 4 hours fitting a warped drawer and never curse at it. People called him patient. I used to call him safe. Safe had once been the best word I knew. The first winter we lived together, my mother's porch began pulling away from her house. An inspector was coming on Monday, and she called me crying late on Friday. Evan loaded his truck before I finished explaining. He drove 3 hours through sleet, slept on her sofa for 2 nights, and rebuilt the damaged supports before the inspector arrived. He did not post a photograph. He did not tell my mother what the work would have cost. On the drive home, he stopped at a gas station and bought me the cinnamon candy I liked because he had noticed I was tired. That was Evan's kind of love. A repaired porch. A full tank. Food placed beside my laptop when a claim kept me working after dark. It was real. Of course it was real. It was also hard to feel desired by a man whose love looked like maintenance. During the last 2 years of our marriage, I had started counting the things he did instead of listening for what he never said. 4 packed lunches in 1 week. 2 loads of laundry. 1 kiss against my temple while he checked the time. When I told him I was lonely, he asked whether we should take a weekend away. When I said I missed passion, he opened a calendar. He always tried to solve the sentence before I finished saying it. Evan believed that staying calm kept a home safe. He had grown up with a father who broke doors and called fear respect. I knew that history. Evan trusted me with it before we married. He told me he would never make a woman measure his mood by the sound of his shoes in a hallway. At first, that promise made me love him. Later, I used it against him. The Copper Finch sat between a laundromat and a small bookstore on Willow Street. Our friend Jonah owned it. Evan had rebuilt the window bench and half the cabinets during a winter when Jonah could barely cover payroll. He charged for the wood and nothing else. Jonah never forgot it. I thought both men made too much of a few shelves. 3 weeks before Evan's birthday, we met Jonah there after closing. The front door had begun scraping the floor. Evan shaved the swollen wood, adjusted the lower hinge, and replaced the worn mat outside with a thick black one that said "Welcome" in plain white letters. I watched him kneel in sawdust while Jonah made coffee. That was how Evan spent a Friday night, fixing another man's door for free. My phone lit up on the table. Cole Mercer had sent me a birthday message, although my birthday had passed 2 months earlier. He corrected himself in the next message and said he had been thinking about me anyway. Cole had been my boyfriend before Evan. He was 35, owned a fitness studio, and could make a room feel as if something important had entered with him. He had also forgotten plans, borrowed money, and once vanished for 4 days after I asked whether we were serious. Those were the reasons I left him. Time had polished them down. I answered that he was late, as usual. His reply came before I put the phone down. He said late attention was still attention. Evan sat across from me after he finished the door. He took a paper napkin from the dispenser and folded it in half, then in half again. His eyes went to my phone and back to me. He asked who had made me smile. I told him Cole had sent a stupid message. Evan asked whether Cole was back in my life or only back on my screen. It was a soft question. That made it worse. I wanted jealousy. I wanted his hand to stop folding the napkin. I wanted proof that another man saying my name could disturb him. Instead, he placed the little square beside his cup and waited. I told him nothing had changed. Then I answered Cole again under the table. Cole needed help with an insurance claim for water damage at his studio. That was the reasonable reason we met for coffee the following Tuesday. I was not handling his file, and I told him so at once. He said he only needed someone smart enough to explain why the adjuster kept asking for old maintenance records. He remembered how I took my coffee. He remembered that I hated foam on the lid. He leaned forward when I spoke instead of checking a list in his head for solutions. I explained the claim in 20 minutes. We stayed for 90. Cole asked about Evan with the careful smile of a man pretending not to compete. I said Evan was fine. Cole wanted to know whether fine was the word married women used when they were afraid to admit they were bored. That should have annoyed me. It felt accurate instead. I told him Evan was dependable but difficult to reach. Cole said quiet men were often called dependable because nobody wanted to call them scared. Then he tapped the table and said he had always wondered why I chose a man who never fought for the room. I reminded him that Evan had fought for me in ways Cole never did. Cole accepted that without arguing. He said Evan had probably been perfect for the version of me who needed recovery. The way he said recovery made my marriage sound like a clinic I should have left years earlier. At home that night, Evan had cooked soup and left a bowl covered on the stove. He asked how late the claim review had gone. I said longer than expected. That was my first deliberate lie, although every word was technically possible. He had also left 2 tickets beside my bowl for a small theatre downtown. Months earlier, during an argument, I had said we never went anywhere unless I arranged it. He had remembered. The show was on Friday, and his note said he had moved a cabinet installation so we could have dinner first. For several minutes, I stood there with the tickets in my hand. This was what I had asked for. A plan he made. A night he protected. Then Cole sent a photograph from his studio. He was smiling beside the repaired wall and had written that my advice saved him from another week of arguing with the insurer. I answered Cole before I thanked my husband. On Friday, I told Evan a late claim inspection had come up. I met Cole for 1 drink instead. He raised his glass to women who made weak men look competent. When I came home, the theatre tickets were still on the hall table. Evan had placed them inside a plain envelope rather than throwing them away. I told myself the envelope proved how easily he accepted disappointment. A man who wanted his wife would have demanded to know where she had been. 2 days later, Cole invited me to lunch at the Copper Finch. Tessa came because I wanted the meeting to look harmless. She was my cousin, 1 year younger than me, and she treated other people's tension like a warm fire. If a story had danger but no cost to her, she moved closer. Evan arrived near the end of lunch to drop off a repaired cash drawer for Jonah. Cole saw him through the window and moved his coat onto the empty chair beside me. It was the chair Evan usually took. When Evan reached the table, Cole pointed to the end seat and said there was room there. Evan looked at the coat. Then he looked at me. I could have moved it. I told him the end seat was fine because we were almost finished. He sat down without a scene. Cole asked whether he could grab 2 more coffees since he was already close to the counter. Evan said Jonah had table service covered. Cole laughed and said useful men never minded being useful. Tessa smiled into her cup. I told Evan he knew Jonah's machine better than any of us and asked him not to make a simple favor awkward. He brought the coffees. Cole watched him set mine down. He said I had trained my husband well. Evan's face changed for less than a second. His mouth tightened. One hand stayed on the back of the chair. Then he sat, pulled a napkin from the dispenser, and folded it into a square. I counted 4 clean edges. I remember because they irritated me. Cole left first. Tessa kissed my cheek and said the lunch had been more interesting than anything she had done all week. Evan waited until we were in the car before he spoke. He asked why I had wanted Cole to treat him like staff. I said he was exaggerating a chair and 2 coffees. Evan said it was not the coffee. It was the way I watched to see whether he would refuse. I told him a confident man would have taken his chair back. He kept both hands on the steering wheel. He asked why I needed to test him. I had never used that word aloud. Cole had used it in a message that morning. He had written that Evan had passed the service test and failed the man test. For a moment, I wondered whether Evan had seen my phone. Then I decided test was an obvious word. Claims had tests. Marriages had tests. Men tested each other without admitting it. I told him there was no test. I only wanted him to stop acting as if every insult became harmless when he answered quietly. Evan said his quiet did not make the insult harmless. It kept the insult from choosing his behavior for him. That sounded polished. Evan always became polished when I wanted him to bleed a little. Cole created a group chat that evening with Tessa and me. He named it Evan's birthday committee. At first, the ideas were normal. A private room at the Copper Finch. 14 guests. Chocolate cake with burnt sugar frosting because Evan liked bitter desserts. Then Cole suggested a roast. Tessa proposed a paper crown. Cole said the crown should have Doormat written across the front. I sent 3 laughing faces before I thought about it. Cole said we could settle the question in stages. He would take Evan's seat. He would give the first toast. He would ask Evan to serve the table. If Evan accepted all 3, the crown would go on. I said Evan might surprise him. Cole replied that men like Evan survived by making women hope for surprises that never came. Tessa asked what would happen if Evan simply walked out. Cole said walking away was the favorite trick of men who wanted credit for self-control. He suggested that I keep Evan seated by reminding him the guests had come for him. The line made sense to me. Leaving would let Evan turn our test into another calm moral victory. Cole also wanted permission to touch me during the toast. Nothing sexual, he said. A hand across the back of my chair. Maybe his fingers on my shoulder. He said Evan needed to see the position he had surrendered. I agreed to the chair and refused the shoulder. Then I changed my answer 20 minutes later. A hand on a shoulder was not betrayal. It was evidence. If Evan felt nothing when another man claimed space around his wife, then I deserved to know. I told them no one was allowed to hit him or damage his clothes. The evening had to remain reasonable. Tessa agreed. Cole sent a picture of a crown. For the next week, planning the party gave me more energy than the marriage had given me in months. I chose guests who liked Evan but had seen his softness. 2 neighbors, Jonah and his partner, Evan's sister Lena, 3 people from my office, a couple from Cole's studio. I told them there would be light roasting, nothing cruel. Cole refined the order. Chair, toast, service, crown, a little frosting on the cheek. I read the list during lunch at my desk. Each item was small. That was how I judged claims, one cause at a time. A chair did not injure a man. A joke did not break a marriage. Frosting washed out. If Evan disliked any part, he could stop it. That was the center of my defense. He could always stop it. We met at the Copper Finch the next Saturday to choose the table layout. Rain had darkened the sidewalk. Cole stepped inside, dragged both shoes across the new Welco mat, and said Evan had finally found a job that suited him. Useful men belonged where everyone could wipe their feet. Tessa laughed. I did too. Jonah heard us from behind the counter. He asked what Cole meant. I said it was a private joke. Evan came through the kitchen carrying the repaired drawer. I had not known Jonah asked him to come. He set the drawer on the counter and looked from Cole's shoes to the mat. Cole asked whether he charged by the cabinet or by the apology. Evan said he charged people he worked for. He helped friends. There was no shame in the answer. That bothered me more than shame would have. Cole leaned against the counter and tried the replacement husband toast. He said some women chose the exciting man first and the safe replacement second. He asked Evan whether second place was comfortable after enough years. Then Cole came around the counter and stood behind my chair. He rested one hand on my shoulder, exactly as we had discussed in the group chat. I did not move away. Evan's eyes settled on Cole's fingers. He told Cole to take his hand off his wife. The sentence was quiet, but it was not a request. Cole removed his hand and smiled, as if he had won something. He said Evan could speak after all. I should have allowed the boundary to stand. Instead, I told Evan that a hand on my shoulder was harmless and that ordering men around did not make him strong. Evan asked whether I had known Cole would do it. I answered that adults did not need written permission for every friendly gesture. Cole tapped the repaired cash drawer and said Evan should stay with Wood because people were harder to control. Jonah told Cole the drawer had been broken before he arrived and that Evan had fixed it as a favor. Cole shrugged. He said favors were another word for unpaid obedience. Jonah told Cole to cut it out. Evan looked at me. He did not ask Cole anything. He took one napkin from the nearest table and folded it. Once. Twice. His thumbnail pressed each line flat. Something opened in me then, only for a breath. I remembered sleet melting from Evan's jacket in my mother's hallway. I remembered him asleep on the sofa with sawdust in his hair after saving a porch that was not his problem. Cole had never stayed when staying was inconvenient. Evan placed the folded napkin beside the new drawer. I closed the thought by telling myself that memories were not a marriage. A man could rescue a porch 9 years ago and still disappear inside himself now. The shared tablet near the register lit up. I had brought it because the guest list was saved there. Cole's newest message appeared across the screen before I could reach it. He wanted to know whether he could finish with the whole cake if Evan still had not reacted. Tessa read it. Her smile left. She asked whether Cole meant smashing it into Evan. I locked the screen and said he was exaggerating for effect. Cole said the room needed a finish. Jonah stared at him long enough that Cole lifted both hands and called it comedy. Evan had already gone into the back room with Jonah. I told myself he had not seen the notification. Later, from my car, I answered Cole. I said he could use the cake only if Evan had accepted every other stage without defending himself. I added that the point was to make Evan react, not hurt him. Tessa did not send another laughing face. At home, Evan kept doing the things that had once made me feel safe. Dinner appeared in the refrigerator with reheating instructions. The loose hinge under the bathroom sink stopped squeaking. My car had gas before Monday. He did not touch me in bed. 3 nights after the tablet message, he sat in the living room with an unfolded napkin on his knee. We did not usually keep paper napkins there. He must have carried it home in his coat pocket. He asked whether Cole was coming to the birthday. I said yes. Evan asked whether the party was for him or about him. I told him the difference depended on his attitude. He named the pattern in a voice so low I had to turn off the television. Cole entered a room. The rules changed. I laughed before Cole reached the end of a joke. Then Evan became the problem for noticing. I said Cole made people feel alive, while Evan inspected every emotion until it died under good lighting. He accepted that. No argument. He said he knew he had made me lonely. When I asked for comfort, he often gave me a task or a plan because plans were easier for him than fear. He said that was his failure and he was willing to work on it. Then he asked whether Cole planned to touch him at the birthday. The question was exact. Not whether there would be a roast. Not whether Cole would insult him. Touch him. I said no. Evan watched me for several seconds. His fingers folded the napkin along an old line. He told me his father used to call violence a lesson. The man would push until someone reacted, then use the reaction as proof that everyone was as ugly as he was. Evan said he would not live in a house built around tests. I told him this was not about his father. It was about a wife who had spent years begging a calm wall to show her that she mattered. That was true. He did not deny it. He offered to cancel the party, book a private dinner, and call the counselor Jonah had recommended. He said he would answer hard questions without fixing them. It was the clearest offer he had made in months. I heard control. If the party disappeared, Evan could tell himself he had saved us. Nobody would see why I had reached this point. Cole would say I had folded the moment Evan applied pressure. I told Evan the party would happen. If he wanted honesty, he could handle it in front of people who knew us. The next morning, I searched the hall closet for the tall red candles we used on birthdays. Behind a box of winter gloves, I found 2 faded hand wraps, grey cloth, frayed ends. Evan had told me years earlier that he boxed as a teenager, but I had never seen him fight. He said his coach taught him that the first skill was leaving the room. I held the wraps for almost a minute. Then I photographed them and sent the picture to Cole. Cole answered that men who kept old wraps were usually remembering the last time they felt dangerous. He said Evan had probably quit after discovering the bag did not hit back. That explanation suited the man I had decided Evan was. I returned the wraps to the closet and found the candles. Tessa called that afternoon. She said the chair and toast had sounded funny, but the cake did not. She wanted her name removed from the plan. I told her no one was asking her to throw it. She said that was not the point. 2 days before the party, she sent one final message. She would not attend. Of course she chose that moment to become moral. Tessa had suggested the crown. She had laughed at the chair. Now that the party might become memorable, she wanted clean hands. I bought the crown myself. Gold paper, red plastic stones, elastic cord. Across the front, I wrote Doormat in black marker. The letters were large enough for the far end of the cafe to read. I also changed the cake order. The original was too small. I ordered a wide chocolate cake with thick pale frosting and 6 short candles. Large enough for 14 guests. Large enough for a finish. The Copper Finch closed at 7 on Evan's birthday. Jonah left the front lights low and turned on the small lamps above each table. The room smelled like coffee, orange peel, and sugar from the cake candles. It did not look like a stage. That helped. Cruel things look less cruel under warm light. 14 people came. Lena arrived first and hugged her brother for a long time. Jonah kept checking the table arrangement. My co-workers brought a bottle of bourbon. Cole arrived last in a fitted black shirt, carrying no gift. Evan wore a dark blue jacket I had bought him 2 birthdays earlier. He thanked everyone. He kissed my cheek. For a moment, his hand stayed at my waist, and I thought he might ask me one final time to stop. He did not. There were 3 empty napkin dispensers on the side counter and 1 full dispenser on our table. I counted them while Cole walked toward the chair beside me. Evan's name card stood in front of it. Cole lifted the card, read it, and placed it at the far end. Then he sat beside me. Conversation thinned. Evan looked at the moved card. He looked at me. I told him the end seat had more room for his shoulders. Lena said the seat was his. Cole answered that birthdays were about guests and the guest of honor could adapt. Evan took the end seat. The first stage had taken less than a minute. Dinner began. Jonah brought small plates and coffee while Cole kept one arm across the back of my chair. He did not touch my skin. He did not need to. Every time Evan looked toward us, Cole's hand was there. When Jonah raised a glass to begin the toast, Cole stood first. He told the room that Evan was a decent man, which was what people said when they could not think of anything exciting. He said Morgan had always liked strength but had confused safety with love after their breakup. Then he lifted his glass toward me and called himself the original choice. 2 people laughed because they thought they were supposed to. My co-worker Priya did not. Lena set down her glass. Evan asked Cole to sit. Cole looked around as if the request proved his point. He said Evan had finally issued an order and deserved applause. I told Evan not to spoil his own party over a toast. That was the second stage. When the plates were cleared, Cole asked for bourbon. Jonah said he would bring it. I interrupted and told Evan he knew which bottle we had brought. Evan said the bottle was on the side counter. I asked him to bring it, along with clean glasses and napkins. The request sounded small, reasonable. He stood. He brought the bottle. He returned with 6 glasses, then went back for more because I reminded him there were 14 people. Cole told the table that a well-trained husband was better than hired staff because he did not expect a tip. This time, nobody laughed at once. Cole laughed alone, and then one man from his studio joined him. Evan placed the last glass in front of me. His hand was steady. I wanted anger so badly that his control felt like an insult. Cole reached under his chair and brought out the paper crown. He read the word across the front slowly. Doormat. Lena stood. She told me the joke was over. I said her brother could speak for himself. Cole stretched the elastic and set the crown on Evan's head. One side caught in his hair. The red plastic stones flashed under the cafe lamps. Evan did not remove it at once. He looked directly at me. Then he lifted it off, placed it beside his plate, and pulled a napkin from the dispenser. He folded it once. Then again. He told me to end the party and ask Cole to leave. His voice did not rise. I saw the same man from every argument. Careful. Measured. Still expecting calm words to do the work of courage. I told him he was proving the joke. Jonah stepped closer to the table. He asked whether we were finished. Cole dipped one finger into the frosting at the edge of the cake. Before Jonah could move it away, Cole dragged the frosting across Evan's cheek. The mark was pale and thick. It ran from near his ear to the corner of his mouth. Evan stood. For 1 second, Cole leaned back. Evan did not touch him. He removed the crown from the table, set it in front of me, and asked me one last time whether this was what I wanted our marriage to be. I heard a man trying to place responsibility on me because he still would not take action himself. I said I wanted a husband who did not need his wife to protect him. He asked me to choose clearly in front of everyone because he would not ask again. There it was, acceptance. The final surrender I had been trying to force into the open. My phone lay beside my plate. I sent Tessa a photograph of the crown. The message showed delivered. No answer came. Cole looked at the cake, then at me. Lena said my name once. Priya shook her head. Jonah put one hand on the cake stand. I moved his hand away. The room had given Evan every chance to become the man I wanted him to be. He had chosen silence at each stage. Chair, toast, drinks, crown, frosting. 5 chances. I lifted the cake with both hands. It was heavier than I expected. The candles had burned low, and melted wax dotted the frosting. I passed it to Cole. I told him to do it. Cole smiled at Evan. Then he drove the cake forward. The cardboard base struck Evan below the nose. Frosting covered his mouth, one eye, and the front of his blue jacket. Chocolate crumbs fell onto the table. One candle bounced into my empty glass. The cake stand rolled in a slow circle before it stopped. Someone near the window made a sound like a cough. I laughed. That doormat won't do a thing, I said. Evan stood with frosting dripping from his chin. He did not shout. He did not swing. For one warm, perfect second, I believed Cole and I had proved everything. Jonah handed Evan a clean napkin. Evan wiped his uncovered eye. He wiped his mouth. Then he folded the dirty napkin once, pressing the crease between his thumb and forefinger. Lena moved away from the table. Evan looked at Cole and told him to leave. Cole laughed. He pushed Evan with both hands in the chest. Evan took one step back and stopped against a chair. Jonah said Cole's name sharply. Cole raised his right fist. Evan moved before the punch reached him. His head slipped to the outside. His left hand brushed Cole's arm away. The right hand traveled 6 inches. One hit. Cole's legs folded. He landed between 2 tables, one shoulder striking a chair on the way down. Glasses jumped. A spoon spun across the floor. Evan did not follow him. He did not kick him. He lowered both hands and took one slow breath. Frosting still covered half his face. Lena said the napkin folds were something Coach Harris taught them when Evan was 15. Fold. Breathe. Decide whether to leave or defend. Their father had made Evan fight at home. The coach had taught him that knowing how to hit was not the same as needing to. Cole sat up with one hand against his jaw. He looked less injured than shocked. He had built the whole evening around a man who would not fight, then discovered Evan had been choosing not to. I told Jonah to call an ambulance. Jonah said Cole was awake and speaking. He also said the cafe cameras had recorded the shove and the first punch. I said the whole thing had been a joke that went too far. Cole turned on me from the floor. He said it was my joke. My list. My words. I had chosen the chair, the serving orders, the crown, the frosting, and the cake. He said I had promised Evan would not react. I told him to stop talking. Evan placed the folded napkin on the table. He said he had seen the same list 3 weeks earlier. The shared tablet at home received my messages. I had paired it with my phone for work and forgotten to turn off previews. Evan had read the words doormat test. He had seen Cole ask about the whole cake. He had seen my answer giving permission. Then he repeated his questions. Was Cole back in my life or only on my screen? Why did I need to test him? Was the party for him or about him? Did Cole plan to touch him? Each question had sounded weak because I needed it to sound weak. Each one had been a door left open for me. Jonah looked at the ruined cake and said this was not a roast. It was a planned assault inside his cafe. He told Cole and me that neither of us would enter the Copperfinch again. I said Evan had allowed it to happen. If he knew, he could have stopped us before the party. Evan said he had spent 6 years stopping small cruelties before I had to decide what kind of person I was. He was done making my choices for me. That was when I struck his chest with the flat of my hand. I told him to apologize to Cole and stop performing for the room. Evan caught my wrist. His grip was firm, not painful. With his other hand, he hooked 2 fingers into the back of my blazer collar. He walked me toward the door. I pulled against him and called his name. My heels slipped once on the tile. Nobody helped me. Priya moved my handbag out of the aisle so we would not trip over it. Lena opened the door. At the threshold, Evan released my wrist and guided me outside by the collar. My shoes landed on the black Welco mat he had installed 3 weeks earlier. He took off his wedding ring. He said, "I was gentle because I loved you. Don't confuse the absence of my love with weakness." Then he placed my handbag beside me and closed the door. Through the glass, I saw Cole get to his feet. When I knocked and motioned for him to come outside with me, he pointed at me while speaking to Jonah. He was still explaining that I had planned it. He left through the side door 5 minutes later and walked the other way. 2 weeks later, Evan's divorce petition arrived at my office with instructions for the first mediation appointment. I moved into a furnished studio above a pharmacy because the house had been Evan's before our marriage. Our joint account was divided, but the money I expected to use for a new start went to deposits, moving costs, and the cafe's damaged chairs. Tessa stopped answering after I accused her of abandoning me, and Priya asked not to be assigned beside me on field reviews. Cole blocked my number after his insurer requested the cafe recording. At work, nobody mentioned the video directly, but conversations ended when I entered the break room. Evan did not become louder after our marriage ended. Jonah told my mother that he returned to the old boxing club twice a week and helped teenagers learn footwork. The first rule he taught them was how to leave before a fight. He still built cabinets. He still packed lunches. He simply stopped doing those things for me. I had wanted one public reaction because I believed anger was the only honest proof that a man cared. Evan gave me the reaction. It lasted less than a second. The choice he made afterward was quieter, and it has lasted much longer. The black mat still said welcome beneath my heels when Evan locked the door.